Chosen one? Some doors close because they're too small for who you're becoming. Staying would have required shrinking, and your soul refused. If you're here right now, it's not by accident. Something in you felt a pull you couldn't explain, a quiet urgency whispering, "Listen, this is for you." You've been standing in the space between what was and what's coming, wondering why familiar paths suddenly collapsed, why access was revoked, why people, places, and plans fell away without warning. But heaven has been watching, and heaven has been speaking, even through the silence. There's a reason this message crossed your path at this exact moment. Chosen one, before we go deeper, pause for a moment, hit subscribe, and comment if your spirit is already responding. Because this message is about to speak directly to you. This isn't a click, it's a confirmation, a signal that you're ready to see what's been hidden in plain sight. You've survived unseen battles, nights where your faith was investigated by doubt, mornings where you questioned your calling, seasons where it felt like the light dimmed and no one noticed the weight you carried. You kept showing up while pieces of your old life quietly disintegrated. Doors you prayed would stay open slammed shut, not because you failed, but because you were evolving. What once fit your assignment could no longer contain your expansion. Heaven closed what would have delayed you. There's a divine intelligence behind every ending you didn't understand. What felt like rejection was redirection. What felt like loss was protection. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. Angels were rerouting you while you were still asking questions. The shadows you walked through were not proof of abandonment. They were evidence of transition. Light doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it blinds first. Chosen one, this moment is a threshold, a breath before revelation. Something ancient is aligning with something new inside you. The truth you've been sensing but couldn't name is about to be revealed. And when it is, everything will finally make sense. Chosen one, let's begin here. With a truth that may feel tender but freeing once it settles into your spirit. Your sensitivity was never an accident. Your depth, your intuition, the way you feel rooms before words are spoken, these were never flaws to correct. They were signals. Heaven marked you with awareness, and awareness carries light. And light by its very nature changes whatever it enters. Have you ever noticed how you didn't need to announce yourself to shift the atmosphere? You could walk into a space quietly, say very little, yet something would stir. Conversations would change. Tension would rise or dissolve. People would either lean in or pull away. And you might have wondered, what did I do? But the real question is, what did your presence reveal? Light does not attract resistance because it is aggressive. It attracts resistance because it exposes what has been hidden, unmanaged, or comfortable in the dark. Your compassion illuminated wounds others avoided. Your integrity highlighted shortcuts others depended on. Your authenticity disrupted patterns that survived on pretense, and you weren't trying to confront anything. You were simply being yourself. That's how powerful true light is. There are systems, relationships, and environments that function only as long as no one sees too clearly. And when you arrived, with your questions, your conscience, your emotional honesty, stagnation felt threatened. Not because you attacked it, but because you named it by existing differently. Can you feel that truth landing right now? Does it explain moments where you felt subtly pushed back, misunderstood, or quietly resisted without explanation? This is where many chosen ones turn inward and blame themselves. They begin to dim, they soften their voice, mute their intuition, second-guess their clarity. But hear this gently. The resistance was never proof that something was wrong with you. It was confirmation that something dormant was being exposed. You were a mirror people didn't ask for, and mirrors make the unready uncomfortable. Ask yourself, how many times did you sense tension rise the moment you spoke truth with kindness? How often did your calm confidence unsettle those who survived on chaos? How many times did you leave a room feeling heavier, even though you entered with peace? These weren't coincidences. They were spiritual responses to light entering restricted spaces. And still, you stayed longer than you should have. You tried to translate yourself. You tried to become smaller, quieter, more palatable. But light cannot pretend to be shadow forever. Eventually, something has to give. Resistance increases when light refuses to dim, and that's often when doors begin to close. This part is important, chosen one. Resistance doesn't mean you're meant to fight harder. Sometimes it means your assignment there is complete. Sometimes it means your light has done all it can do in that space, and staying would only cost you clarity. So if you're wondering why things became tense right before the ending, why opposition grew when you were most aligned, ask yourself this: what was my light revealing that could no longer be ignored? Take a breath, let that settle. Because once you understand why light attracts resistance, you stop internalizing what was never yours to carry, and you begin to see the door closing, not as failure, but as confirmation that your light has outgrown its surroundings. Chosen one, let's move gently into this next revelation, because it explains a tiredness you couldn't name and a heaviness that followed you even on good days. Not all exhaustion comes from doing too much. Some of it comes from being in places that quietly take more than they give. These environments don't always look dark or hostile. In fact, they often feel familiar, even safe at first. That's how they survive, by feeling like home before they begin to drain you. Have you ever walked away from certain spaces feeling foggy, less clear, less yourself, even though nothing bad happened? You smiled, you contributed, you showed up with sincerity, yet something in you felt thinner afterward. That wasn't weakness, that was discernment trying to speak. Some environments feed on energy the way roots feed on soil. They draw life from whoever is most alive. And because you carry light, awareness, and emotional depth, you became a source without realizing it. These places rely on contributors, not creators. They function by circulating the same patterns, the same conversations, the same limitations. And they need people like you to keep the system moving. Your encouragement, your insight, your emotional labor kept things afloat. But the moment your growth accelerated, something shifted. Your clarity exposed the imbalance. Your boundaries disrupted the flow. And suddenly, the environment that once welcomed you began to resist you. Ask yourself this, chosen one, when you began to heal, did the atmosphere feel tighter? When you started speaking with more confidence, did the space feel less comfortable? When you stopped overgiving, did the connection weaken? These are signs that the environment was never meant to grow. Chosen one, this part requires tenderness, not because it is weak, but because it reveals how quietly the spirit can be challenged. Not every battle announces itself with noise. Some arrive as whispers, as pauses, as moments where your light was not attacked outright, but gently questioned. And because you are perceptive, because you are compassionate, you may not have recognized the test for what it was at first. Have you noticed how your joy didn't disappear suddenly, but slowly soften? How your confidence didn't shatter, but blurred at the edges? There were no open confrontations, no dramatic resistance. Instead, there were sighs when you spoke with clarity, silence when you expressed truth, subtle redirections when your ideas carried weight. Over time, these moments accumulate, and the spirit begins to wonder if it is simply too much. But chosen one, that wondering was planted, not earned. Discouragement doesn't always arrive as failure. Sometimes it shows up as delay, as being overlooked, as your contribution being acknowledged only after someone else repeats it. These experiences were not random. They were quiet attempts to teach your spirit to hesitate, and hesitation over time dulls clarity. Did you begin to second-guess your instincts? Did you start explaining yourself more than before? Did your voice lower when your truth rose? These were signals that something was pressing gently against your light. Minimization is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as humility. You were praised for being easygoing, understanding, low maintenance, and slowly your boundaries were interpreted as inconvenience, your growth as distance, your discernment as coldness. Not because you changed for the worse, but because you changed at all. Environments that benefit from your openness. Chosen one, this is the moment where understanding begins to heal what confusion could not. Because some endings don't make sense until you stop viewing them as loss and start seeing them as intervention. When that door closed, it didn't feel gentle. It felt abrupt, disorienting, maybe even unfair. You replayed the final moments again and again, searching for what you could have done differently. But what if the ending wasn't a reflection of your worth? What if it was evidence of divine timing stepping in? Removal is one of the most misunderstood forms of protection. We often expect rescue to look like addition, new opportunities, new connections, open doors. But sometimes heaven protects by subtracting, by interrupting what would have slowly eroded your clarity, by separating you from environments that were quietly negotiating your values. You didn't leave because you were weak. You were removed because you were becoming too strong to stay contained. Think back, chosen one. Were you starting to compromise small pieces of yourself just to keep things working? Were you explaining away discomfort, spiritual fatigue, or inner resistance because walking away felt too costly? These were early signals. Your spirit was alerting you before your mind could fully articulate the danger. And when you didn't leave on your own, grace stepped in and closed the door for you. This is where the reframe matters most. Rejection pushes you away without care. Preservation pulls you out with purpose. That separation was not punishment, it was prevention. There were paths ahead that would have required you to dim your discernment, delay your growth, or dilute your calling. And before that compromise could take root, removal occurred. Not because you weren't wanted, but because you were needed elsewhere. Have you noticed how, after the pain settled, your spirit began to breathe again? How clarity returned in waves? How the fog lifted just enough for you to see what you couldn't while inside the situation? That is the aftermath of rescue. It doesn't always feel like relief at first. Sometimes it feels like grief. Because even what is unhealthy can feel familiar. But familiarity is not destiny. Separation also protects the future version of you. The one who walks with authority, alignment, and peace. The one who no longer negotiates their intuition for acceptance. If you had stayed, that future might have been delayed. Not destroyed, but postponed. And divine timing does not waste years where alignment is required. Ask yourself this gently. What parts of me were being preserved by this ending? What strengths was I about to lose if I stayed longer? What clarity was waiting on the other side of the door closing? These questions shift the narrative from victimhood to vision. Chosen one, rescue doesn't always arrive as comfort. Sometimes it arrives as disruption. But every divine removal carries intention. You were not taken out to be left stranded. You were moved to be repositioned. And what's being preserved in you now, your calling, your light, your integrity, will soon make the reason undeniable. So let the ending rest. Let it be complete. Because what was removed was never meant to define you. It was meant to protect you. And the path ahead is already opening. Not because you forced it, but because you were preserved long enough to walk it fully awake. Chosen one, this is the quiet part of the journey. The part no one applauds, yet everything depends on. After the exit, after the door closed and the noise settled, there was a stillness you weren't prepared for. Not emptiness, but unfamiliar silence. And in that silence, confidence didn't rush back in with certainty or bold declarations. It returned the way dawn does, slowly, gently, almost imperceptibly at first. You may have expected to feel stronger immediately, relieved, clear. Instead, you found yourself questioning instincts that once flowed naturally. You replayed conversations. You wondered if you had imagined the resistance, exaggerated the tension, misunderstood the signs. This doesn't mean you were wrong. It means your nervous system was learning how to exist without pressure. When you've spent too long shrinking, expansion feels foreign at first. Confidence, chosen one, is not something you rebuild by force. It's something you remember. It returns as you reconnect with the version of yourself that existed before you learned to soften your truth to keep peace, before you edited your words, before you measured your worth by how comfortable others felt around you. That self is still here, not lost, just waiting for safety to return. Have you noticed the small moments where your intuition spoke again? A quiet no you honored without explanation. A pause you trusted instead of pushing through. A decision you made without seeking permission. These are not minor victories. They are signals. Your inner knowing is stretching, testing its voice, learning that it will not be punished anymore for being honest. There may be days when confidence feels distant, when old doubts resurface and whisper familiar questions. What if I was the problem? What if I overreacted? What if I don't belong anywhere? When those thoughts arrive, don't argue with them, just observe. They are echoes from a season that no longer has authority. Confidence grows when you stop fighting yourself and start listening again. Reclaiming confidence also means grieving the version of you that learned to survive by becoming smaller. That version was not weak, they were adaptive. They protected you when you needed protection. But their role is complete now. You no longer need to disappear to be safe. You no longer need to doubt yourself to stay connected. Can you feel how freeing that truth is? As you move forward, confidence will show up as steadiness rather than certainty, as clarity instead of volume, as trust in your timing, your discernment, your pace. You won't need to prove who you are. You'll recognize it, and others will feel it without explanation. So ask yourself gently, who was I before I learned to shrink? What felt natural before I learned to hesitate? The answers to these questions are not in the future. They are already inside you, resurfacing layer by layer. And with every quiet act of self-trust, confidence is returning, not as something new, but as something reclaimed. Chosen one, this is where the journey becomes intentional, not defensive, not hardened, intentional. After everything you've walked through, the instinct may be to guard yourself with walls, distance, or withdrawal. But protecting your light was never meant to look like isolation. It was meant to look like discernment, calm, grounded, and deeply self-aware. There is a difference between closing off and choosing wisely. Walls are built out of fear. Discernment is built out of clarity. And you are being invited now into a season where you no longer give your energy automatically. You pause, you sense, you listen before you engage. Not because you are suspicious of the world, but because you finally trust yourself enough to honor what your spirit feels. Have you noticed how your body responds before your mind does? How certain conversations feel heavy before a word is spoken? How some opportunities feel loud but empty, while others feel quiet yet alive? These are not random sensations. They are your guidance system returning online. Protecting your light means responding to these signals without guilt, without over-explaining, and without asking permission. This is also the season where approval loses its grip. You no longer need everyone to understand you to feel valid. Alignment becomes more important than applause. You begin choosing spaces that nourish rather than tolerate you. You begin recognizing that peace is not something you earn by pleasing others. It's something you preserve by being honest. Can you feel how different that energy is? Intentional softness is not fragility. It is strength without armor. You don't harden your heart to stay safe. You keep it open selectively. You offer your warmth where it can be received, your insight where it can be respected, your presence where it can be reciprocated, and where it cannot, you step back without bitterness. That restraint is wisdom. Protecting your light also means releasing the need to explain your boundaries. The more aligned you become, the less justification you require. Your no doesn't need a story. Your distance doesn't need a defense. Your growth doesn't need permission. You are allowed to choose yourself quietly. You are allowed to change your access. You are allowed to protect what heaven entrusted to you. So ask yourself, chosen one, where does my energy feel honored? Where does it feel drained? Where do I feel expanded simply by being present? These questions will guide you more accurately than any external advice ever could. As you move forward, your light will no longer strain to be seen. It will simply be. And those meant to walk with you will recognize it without explanation. This is not the season of proving. This is the season of preserving. And you are walking into it with clarity, grace, and intentional power.